What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and this past week was an exciting one. We had the first Apple event of the year on Tuesday. I live streamed that, so shout out to everybody who was in that live stream. We saw multiple new products get announced at that event, and then of course after the event, just like we predicted, we saw the release of the RC build of iOS 15.4 along with all of the other software. So in this video, we're going to be giving our final follow-up on 15.4 before it releases publicly. We'll also discuss the new Apple products that were announced and what I ordered for the channel. And as we do every Saturday, we'll finish off by talking about the latest Apple news and rumors from the past week. And if you guys are excited for iOS 15.4 to drop next week, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. All right, so let's start off the same as we do every single Saturday in these follow-up videos. Let's talk about some additional new features and changes found in 15.4. Yes, there are even more that I haven't covered here on the channel. This update is just insane. So the first one has to do with the visual lookup feature, one of the new features in iOS 15. It was only available in the USA and I believe Canada as well, but now it's available for countries outside of the USA. So you can see here, I have a statue from somewhere in Germany. And now if I swipe up, you can see we have lookup right there. So if I go ahead and tap on that, you can see it will show the results, and it shows the result for, I can't even say what that is, but it shows the monument here in Germany. So it works outside of the US now. I tried this on iOS 15.3.1 and it just didn't show anything for lookup. Like it didn't even give me the option to look it up. So that is new here in 15.4. Good news for those of you outside of the US. Also, if you go into the App Store for the first time on the RC build and you don't have notifications enabled, you might see this splash screen right here. So this was found by somebody over on Reddit. I didn't get this because I have notifications turned on, but this is a new splash screen, a new pop-up right here in the App Store. And this has to do with when you go into the App Store right here and then you tap on your icon up in the top right. And if you go into notifications, you can see you have these two new toggles here for turning on notifications in the App Store. So if you have those both disabled, you might see this new alert right here. We also have a nice new feature for iPadOS 15.4, and this actually just showed up in the RC build. It wasn't in the betas. So if you go into your settings and go to sounds, you will see that we have a new toggle down here at the bottom that says fixed position volume controls. And it says, when enabled, the volume up and down buttons will remain in a fixed position. When off, the buttons will dynamically change depending on the orientation of your iPad. So this was a feature that was originally introduced on the iPad mini last year, and now it looks like that same feature is making its way to all of the iPads with iPadOS 15.4. I like it. Now, also new in 15.4, the RC build is the new green iPhone 13 wallpaper. So I talked about this previously, but the reason I bring this up again is because we don't get the new iPhone SE promotional wallpapers in 15.4, but I have those and I wanted to provide those to you guys. So I will leave the link to all three of these iPhone SE 2022 wallpapers in the description below. Another new feature I just recently noticed here in the RC build is this new alert at the top of notes that says, do you want to be notified when mentioned in shared notes? So that is a new pop-up. I've never seen that before in iOS 15. So that is a new little alert right there. There was also a new splash screen for notes if you don't have notifications turned on. Now, as far as bugs and bug fixes go, I did want to point out that Apple Music has been acting really wonky here on the RC build. I don't know if it's necessarily an issue with 15.4 or if it's just Apple Music, but everything seems to be a little bit slow in Apple Music ever since I updated to the RC build. But again, it could have something to do with the Apple Music service since it is web-based, of course. But aside from that, I'm having literally zero issues here on the RC build of 15.4. I really don't have anything at all to complain about. I don't have any issues with storage loading up. It loads up really quick for me. I don't have that issue. I don't have any issues with anything that's specific to 15.4. Of course, I have issues with like AirPlay to HomePod and things like that, but that's been going on for a lot longer than 15.4 beta 1 released. So as far as 15.4 goes, it's relatively bug-free. I mean, really hardly any issues whatsoever for me. And in terms of overall raw performance, the performance is also excellent. I mean, I really have no complaints in terms of, stability, app crashes, or multitasking. Everything is running perfectly fine here on 15.4. And it is also a noticeable difference coming from 15.3 and 15.3.1. And the same goes for the battery life. The battery life is also the best I've had so far in iOS 15. So 15.4 not only brings the heat with a ton of new features and changes, but it also has the best performance and the best battery life of any iOS 15 version I've tested here on the channel. I mean, this update is literally perfection. Of course, I'm sure something will come out after everybody installs the final version. We'll start seeing, minor bugs come out. But as of right now, things are looking amazing for 15.4. Now, speaking of that final version, when can we expect that to get released? So next week, of course, is going to be the week of March 14th. That is the Monday, and we could see 15.4 on Monday the 14th, or more likely on Tuesday the 15th. Apple usually picks a Monday or Tuesday to release a final version of iOS. So I would expect it to come on the 14th or the 15th. And after that, I would even expect to see iOS 15.5 beta 1, maybe the day after 15.4 drops. Sometimes it even happens on the same day. So maybe the 16th or maybe even the 17th, who knows? I would still expect to see 15.5 beta 1 next week as well. So that's exciting, but of course don't get too excited for that version because we're not going to have too many new features after 15.4 came in here and just unloaded, 70 new features on us. But nonetheless, next week will be very, very exciting. I will have a ton of videos for you guys on both software and hardware. And the reason I say hardware is because I did also order quite a few Apple products this past week. So if we go ahead into here, you guys can see what I ordered. The main thing I'm excited about is my Mac Studio and my Studio display. So of course, I dropped a lot of money on this, all for you guys and all thanks to you guys as well. But you guys can see here, I did get the Mac Studio. I went with the M1 Ultra version as well. And here is my specific spec. I did have to upgrade this a little bit, and you can see I went with the 4TB SSD. I went with the 20-core CPU, 64-core GPU, and of course it does have the 32-core neural engine as well. So I'm really excited for this. I did also get the Studio display with the nano texture glass. And then I did also order the new Black Magic keyboard and the black trackpad to go along with the Mac Studio. I most likely will not keep these. I just wanted to unbox them and show you guys since I don't necessarily need them and they are quite expensive, but I do want to show you guys that on video. So I decided to get that as well. Along with that, I did also get the new iPad Air 5th generation. I got it in the new purple color. I love the look of the purple. I got 64 gigabytes because I feel like 256 is quite pricey for what you're getting. I think that's in iPad Pro territory. I'll talk more about that next week, but I'm excited about that iPad Air. Then I did also get the white iPhone SE 3. However, I got that in 128 gigabytes because I feel like that is a much better value than 64 given the small price increase. So as you can see, we have a lot of new hardware coming to the channel in addition to the new software coming next week. So I cannot wait. It's going to be a very busy and exciting week next week. All right, so now let's move on to the Apple Weekly segment of this video where I share some of the latest Apple news and rumors. So first up, if you were expecting a new Mac Mini at Apple's peak performance event, you were probably a little bit let down. But I have some good news for you. A new Mac Mini is still coming this year. According to 9to5Mac, Apple will be releasing a new Mac Mini with the M2 and M2 Pro chip later on this year. The M2 Mac Mini is going to feature an 8-core CPU and a 10-core GPU, but the M2 Pro Mac Mini will have a new 12-core CPU. They don't mention the GPU specs, but I'm sure it will be a nice improvement over the M2 Mac Mini. Now, they also mentioned that Apple had plans to introduce a high-end version of the current Mac Mini with the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips, but they were probably scrapped to make way for the Mac Studio. So even though there's an M1 Max version of the Mac Studio, I'm sure the M2 Mac Mini will be about half the price. I still see the M1 Max Mac Studio as more of a Mac Mini Pro, so to say. But I'll be interested to see, how the two compare once we get our hands on them. Another product that some were disappointed did not come at the Apple event is a new MacBook. And luckily for you guys, new MacBooks are also still coming later this year. So according to 9to5Mac, once again, the M2 MacBook Air and the M2 MacBook Pro are both set to release before the end of the year. The new MacBook Air is going to have the M2 chip with an 8-core CPU and a 10-core GPU, and the new 13-inch MacBook Pro will also have the M2 chip, but it's going to keep the same design as the M1 model, which of course had the touch bar. Another interesting tidbit is that Apple's been considering dropping the Pro name from the MacBook Pro. which would make it just MacBook. So that's interesting, and I'm sure this has to do with the new Mac Studio coming out, and it's just going to be really confusing having all these different Pro and Studio names out there. So I think Apple's going to try to keep it and try to make it a little bit more simple for the average consumer. Now, speaking of events, the next Apple event is the Worldwide Developers Conference in June. And while this is known for being predominantly about software, it looks like we could be seeing hardware announced this year. And this rumor comes courtesy of Ross Young, who is extremely accurate with his rumors. He tweeted this out: still expecting a 27-inch mini LED display from Apple in June. Guess it might be a Studio Display Pro. Have confirmed it with multiple companies in their supply chain. And we believe production has already started on the panel for the new display. So that's right, a new Pro version of the just announced Studio Display is apparently coming in June. And if you think about it, why would Apple only announce a new display at this event? I don't think they would. And that's why I and Ross Young think that the new Mac Pro will also be unveiled at WWDC in June. And this thing should be an absolute beast if the Mac Studio was any indication. But it doesn't even end there, because Mark Gurman thinks that a new iMac Pro is also coming this year. He said this: still expecting an iMac Pro for those wondering. M2 versions of the Mac Mini, MacBook Pro 13-inch, and 24-inch iMac are also in development. So an iMac Pro will also likely be released this year, putting it right in between the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro. And this is just getting overwhelming, even for me, to keep talking about here on the channel, let alone for your average consumer trying to figure out what Mac they want to buy. Oh, and by the way, speaking of the iMac, Apple just discontinued the 27-inch iMac after the peak performance event, and according to 95Mac, they have no plans of releasing another one at all. Here's what they said: this not only applies to a larger screen model, but also versions with Pro, Max, or Ultra chips. Based on information, Apple is working on a new 24-inch iMac expected to be introduced sometime in 2023, but similar to the MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro, it is unlikely to feature Apple's high-end processors. And to me, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, the market that would be buying a 27-inch iMac are going to be buying the Mac Studio or the Mac Pro instead. So I think it makes sense for Apple to discontinue the 27-inch iMac. And as a former 27-inch iMac owner, rest in peace. We will miss you. So there you have it. That is the latest batch of Apple news from this past week, along with some additional features and information on iOS 15.4. I don't have any news about something coming in 2025 or 2026 in this episode. I know I've been doing that in the past few episodes, but I wanted to focus more on the short term in this week's version of Apple Weekly. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up, and also make sure to subscribe for a very busy and exciting week next week. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.